We are still in the second objective, but now we move on from conditionals to related conditionals. We will just recall what we had seen about conditionals in the previous video. We had seen this that a conditional statement is a compound statement that consists of a hypothesis and a conclusion. Now, this is very important, the second statement now, which is false only when its premise or its hypothesis is true and its conclusion is false. This is very crucial because in the coming problems, we are going to use this statement. So the hypothesis will be true and the conclusion must be false. Only then this conditional statement is false. So we will see about related conditionals. Now, any conditional statement that can be related in written as if and then. We had seen this if then form already in the previous video. Now, P and Q are two statements. Let's see an example. If measure of angle A is 35, then angle A is an acute angle. Okay, this makes sense because less than 90 degree will be acute angle. Measure of angle A is 35, then angle A is acute angle. But now if you have to write the converse of this, that means we are swapping the conclusion and hypothesis. See, then becomes first. Now we are writing this statement, say Q first. If angle A is an acute angle, then measure of angle A is 35 degrees. Now we swapped. Then the inverse would mean the negation of the conditional statement. So you can see over here the negation of P and negation of Q. So this over here, P and Q, negation of these both. That means just add not in both the cases. If measure of angle A is not 35, then angle A is not an acute angle. This is very simple. So inverse is negation of these both. And last one, contrapositive, is the negation of converse. Now you can see the converse is Q and P, isn't it? Here, negation of Q and P. What does that mean? So over here, just add not to this converse, both the sides. If angle A is not an acute angle, can you see it's just not an acute angle? Then measure of angle A is not 35 degrees. So these are the conditions, related conditionals. So you can just pause the video over here, go through these because this is very crucial. Now we will see a problem based on this, on related conditionals. The tang is a saltwater fish that inhabits shallow coral reefs in tropical areas. Tangs are a part of Acanthuridae. Okay, this is pronounced as Acanthuridae or Acanthuridae. So anyone is fine, any pronunciation. So Acanthuridae family, along with sturgeon fish and unicorn fish. All members of Acanthuridae family are saltwater fish. So over here they have mentioned in the question itself, tangs are a part of Acanthuridae family, and along with tangs, which are other parts of Acanthuridae family, these are sturgeon fish, unicorn fish, all these are saltwater fishes. Okay. Then write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Just now we had seen converse, inverse, and contrapositive, right? We need to write it all of the true conditional statement for this statement. Tangs are fish that live in salt water. So now this is the conditional statement given. Tangs are fish that live in salt water. Determine whether each related conditional is true or false. If a statement is false, then find a counterexample. This looks like a very huge kind of a problem. Now, let's cut it down one by one. The main question is to write converse, inverse, and contrapositive. And then to find the related conditional, whether it's true or false, check the truth value. And also, if it is false, you need to give a counter example. But everything will be given over here in the question. So now let's see one by one. We have to remember this conditional statement is A to B. Now first statement to P to Q. It's the same thing. Converse would be swapping this. Inverse is negation of A and negation of B. Lastly, contrapositive is negation of the converse, that is negation B, negation A. Now, over here, look at the statement given. Write it as if then conditional. Over here we have tangs are fish that live in salt water. So salt water is conclusion, tang is a fish is the hypothesis. So if a fish is a tang, because tangs are fish, if a fish is a tang, then it lives in salt water. So this is a conditional. It can be different as well, but the most important thing is the salt water will be there in the conclusion, and the fish tag as a fish will be the hypothesis. That's it. So now if a fish is tang, then it lives in salt water. This is the given conditional. Now based on this conditional, we will start writing converse first. So let's swap these two things. Now converse would be if the fish lives in if a fish lives in salt water, because we have to write the second statement first. See, it should be swapped, isn't it? This will go over here, this will go over here. So now it says if a fish is salt water, then the fish it is a tang, or the fish is tang. Okay, so we have changed it. If a fish lives in salt water, then it is a tang. Now look at this. What it says exactly. What does the converse of the conditional say? If a fish you find in salt water, then it must be a tang. Really, that is not true. Why? Because you have, let's see, over here only they are mentioned surgeon fish and unicorn fish are also saltwater fishes because they are in Acanthuridae family. So now over here these two are also saltwater, but they are not tangs. Tangs are a different, a different part. So over here we can disprove this by a counter example. Say a surgeon fish lives in salt water, but it is not a tang. Or you can use this, a unicorn fish lives in salt water, but it is not tang. So this is wrong. See, the hypothesis is true. We have to have hypothesis true, conclusion false. Is the hypothesis true? A surgeon lives in salt water. Yes, hypothesis. A fish lives in salt water. Yes, this is correct. Then it is tang. Is it a tang? No. A surgeon fish is not a tang. It's a different fish. So that is how we solve this. So therefore the converse is false. Now we will go to the next one, inverse. So the conditional was given. If a fish is tang, then it lives in salt water. Now, based on the conditional, write the inverse and let's analyze it now. Inverse is negation A and negation B. So over here, if a fish is not tang, then it does not live in salt water. Now, looking at this, how do we write this? Just add not and not over here. If a fish is not tang, then it does not live in salt water. But sadly, this is wrong. Why? Because we just now told surgeon fish is living in salt water. So let's see whether the hypothesis is true. A surgeon fish is not a tang. Yes, the hypothesis is true. But it does not live in salt water. This is false. The conclusion is false. So again, the inverse is false. So this is the counter example we gave. See, it says if a fish is not a tang, the fish is not a tang. Yes, surgeon fish is not a tang, unicorn fish is not a tang. Then it does not live in salt water, which is wrong because these two live in salt water. It is given in the question. So this is the thing. Now, lastly, we will do the contrapositive part. So now contrapositive is negation of converse and negation of B and A. That is, to write the contrapositive, it is best you go back and see what was the converse. So if a fish does not live in salt water, then it is not tang. That is the thing. Now let's write over here. See, contrapositive is if a fish does not live in salt water, then it is not tang. This is true. Why? Because if a fish does not live in salt water, then it is not tang. Now, can let's analyze this first hypothesis. If a fish does not live in salt water, that means it is a fresh water. then it is not tang, because tangs can only live in salt water. Now imagine this is salt water and this is fresh water. Now, if tangs are only over here because they are saltwater fish. If the fish does not live in salt water, that means you're choosing fresh water over here. Okay, fish from here. Then will it be tang? No, this cannot be tang because tang is only in the salt water. So whenever you choose a fish that is not in the salt water, then it cannot be tang. Yes, that is true. So this condition, contrapositive, is true over here. So this is how we can solve related conditionals. You will have to write the conditional first, and then you need to apply the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. This looks very huge, but you might be just asked for the converse or only the inverse. So you must be thorough with all the three and understand this conditional, this formula sort of thing, where converse is swapping the conditional statement, whereas inverse is negating the conditional statement. Contrapositive is negating the converse. If you know this, then it'll be very easy. And look into the question for hints. Now, say for example, to write the counter example, the information will be given in the question. So use the information from the question and write the counter examples. And look through the statements of inverse, converse, or contrapositive. If it is true, then that's it. You don't have a counter example. Only when it is false, you will have a counter example.